What if I told you that one of history's most powerful philosophies, the one practiced by emperors, slaves, and modern CEOs alike, began with a merchant who lost everything in a shipwreck? That merchant was Zeno of Citium, and his catastrophic loss became humanity's philosophical gain. Today, we're diving deep into the hidden origins of Stoicism, a journey that will take us from ancient Cyprus to the heart of Rome, revealing how a philosophy born from disaster became the secret weapon of history's greatest leaders. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just what Stoicism is, but why it has survived for over 2,000 years, and why it's more relevant today than ever. Picture this. It's around 300 BCE. A successful Phoenician merchant named Zeno is sailing near Athens when disaster strikes. His ship crashes, and with it, his entire fortune disappears beneath the waves. Stranded and broke in a foreign city, Zeno wanders into a bookshop. There, he encounters the writings of Socrates for the first time. Something about the old philosopher's wisdom strikes him like lightning. "Where can I find men like this?" Zeno asks the bookseller. The man points outside. "Right there, that's Crates of Thebes, the cynic philosopher." This moment changed everything. Zeno, who had spent his life accumulating wealth, was about to discover a different kind of richness. But here's what most people don't know. Zeno didn't just stumble into philosophy. His transformation from merchant to sage was messy, embarrassing, and deeply human. His teacher Crates once forced him to carry a pot of lentil soup through the busy streets of Athens, then deliberately broke it, leaving Zeno covered in soup and humiliated. When Zeno tried to hide his face in shame, Crates said, "What's wrong, little Phoenician?" "Nothing terrible has happened, just a bit of soup spilled." These lessons in overcoming shame and social embarrassment would become core to what Zeno eventually taught. Because Stoicism wasn't born from perfection. It was forged in the fires of human struggle. Here's where the story gets really interesting. Zeno could have taught in private, like other philosophers of his time. The Epicureans had their exclusive garden. The academy had its closed doors. But Zeno chose something radical. He set up shop in the Stoa Poikile, the Painted Porch, right in the heart of Athens' bustling marketplace. This wasn't just any building. The Painted Porch was covered in vivid murals depicting legendary battles and heroic deeds. Think of it as ancient Athens' version of Times Square, crowded, noisy, and completely public. Why would a philosopher choose such a chaotic place to teach? Because Zeno believed philosophy belonged to everyone, not just the elite. He wanted his teachings to be tested in the real world, among real people dealing with real problems. This decision was so significant that his followers weren't called Zenonists. They were called Stoics, after the Stoa where they gathered. The name stuck because it represented something bigger than one man's ideas. It represented a philosophy for the people. And this accessibility principle, it's why Stoicism would eventually spread from Greece to Rome and across the known world. It wasn't precious or pretentious. It was practical. After Zeno died, something remarkable happened. Instead of the school collapsing or splintering, it grew stronger. Two men made this possible, Cleanthes and Chrysippus. Cleanthes was a former boxer who worked as a water carrier by day and studied philosophy by night. Talk about commitment. He preserved Zeno's teachings and added something crucial, the idea that the universe itself is alive and rational. But it was Chrysippus who turned Stoicism into an intellectual powerhouse. This guy was a machine. He wrote over 700 works. Ancient sources said, if there had been no Chrysippus, there would have been no Stoa. Here's what made Chrysippus brilliant. He organized Stoicism into three interconnected parts, like a living organism. Logic was the skeleton, how we think and reason. Physics was the flesh, understanding how the universe works. Ethics was the soul, how we should live. The Stoics used beautiful metaphors to explain this unity. Philosophy was like an egg, logic as the protective shell. ethics as the nourishing white, and physics as the life-giving yolk at the center. This systematic approach is why Stoicism could survive and adapt across cultures and centuries. It wasn't just a collection of wise sayings, it was a complete worldview that could answer life's biggest question. But here's where Stoicism gets really fascinating. When it traveled to Rome, it didn't just survive, it transformed. Enter Painted of Rhodes, the man who made Stoicism Roman. Living among Rome's elite in the 2nd century BCE, Painted realized something crucial. Romans didn't just want to contemplate virtue, they wanted to practice it in the halls of power. So he adapted Stoicism. He softened some of its harsher edges and emphasized practical ethic. Instead of pure philosophical theory, he focused on how to be a good leader, a faithful friend, and an honorable citizen. This wasn't selling out, this was evolution. Painted understood that for philosophy to matter, it had to work in the real world of politics, business, and relationships. His student Posidonius took this even further. This guy was a Renaissance man before the Renaissance. Scientist, historian, philosopher, and teacher rolled into one. He taught that understanding the cosmos was essential to understanding yourself. When, like Pompey and Cicero, attended Posidonius's lectures on the island of Rhodes, they weren't just learning Greek philosophy. They were receiving a complete education in how to live and lead. Cicero, though not technically a Stoic, became one of Stoicism's greatest popularizers. He translated Greek concepts into Latin, invented new Latin terms for philosophical ideas, and showed Romans how their own heroes embodied Stoic virtues. This Roman adaptation is why Stoicism didn't remain an abstract Greek theory. It became a practical Roman discipline, and that's what made it immortal. Now we come to Stoicism's golden age, when the philosophy reached its full flowering in 3 extraordinary men: Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Here's what's incredible about these 3. They came from completely different backgrounds, yet all found profound truth in Stoic principles. Seneca was the ultimate insider, wealthy, powerful, advisor to Emperor Nero. He lived in the corridors of power, but never forgot that external success meant nothing without inner virtue. His letters to his friend Lucilius read like a master class in practical philosophy. He wrote about everything from managing anger to dealing with difficult people to finding meaning in setbacks. But Seneca's life also shows us that being a Stoic doesn't mean being perfect. He struggled with the contradictions of serving a tyrant while trying to live virtuously. His eventual forced suicide on Nero's orders became itself a Stoic teaching, how to face death with dignity and purpose. Epictetus represents the opposite extreme. Born a slave, he understood powerlessness in ways that privileged Romans never could. Yet from this position of ultimate vulnerability, he developed some of Stoicism's most powerful insights. His famous teaching, "Some things are within our power while others are not," wasn't abstract philosophy. It was hard-won wisdom from someone who knew what it meant to have no control over external circumstances. When Epictetus gained his freedom and began teaching, his lessons had an authenticity that couldn't be faked. He'd lived the philosophy, not just studied it. Marcus Aurelius was the crown jewel, literally. As Roman emperor, he wielded more power than almost any human in history. Yet his private journal, the Meditations, reveals a man constantly struggling to live up to his own ideal. Here's what makes Marcus unique. He never intended his philosophical writings to be published. The Meditations were his private conversations with himself, written during military campaigns while dealing with wars, plagues, and political crises. Reading Marcus is like having access to the inner thoughts of the most powerful man in the world as he tries to stay humble, just, and compassionate. When he writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He's not pontificating. He's reminding himself how to rule wisely when everything is falling apart. These three men prove that Stoicism isn't about your circumstances. It's about your response to them. Wealth or poverty, freedom or slavery, power or powerlessness. The philosophy works regardless. Now let's talk about something most people don't know about Stoicism. Its deeply mystical side. The Stoics believed in something called the Logos, not just a concept, but the divine reason that orders the entire universe. The Logos was the living intelligence that connected every atom, every star, every human thought. Here's the esoteric part. The Stoics taught that your ability to reason is literally a fragment of this cosmic intelligence. When you think clearly, you're participating in the same divine reason that moves the planets and grows the trees. This makes Stoicism both rational and spiritual. It wasn't just about self-control, it's about recognizing your place in an intelligent, purposeful universe. When Marcus Aurelius writes about accepting fate, he's not talking about passive resignation. He's talking about aligning yourself with the cosmic order, playing your part in the grand symphony of existence. This is why Stoic practices feel so powerful even today. When you focus on what's in your control, you're not just using a psychological technique, you're connecting with the fundamental structure of reality itself. The Stoics were pantheists. They saw God not as separate from nature, but as nature itself in its most perfect rational form. Every moment of acceptance, every act of virtue, every choice to respond with wisdom instead of impulse, these are acts of cosmic participation. This mystical dimension is why Stoicism influenced not just philosophy, but early Christianity. The Gospel of John's famous opening, "In the beginning was the Word, Logos," directly echoes Stoic cosmology. Here's one of history's most remarkable preservation stories. Most early Stoic writings should have been lost forever. We're talking about hundreds of works by Chrysippus, detailed treatises by Panayiotis, scientific works by Posidonius, almost all gone. What survived? Mainly the works of our three Roman masters, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, and they survived by the thinnest of margins. Medieval monks, despite sometimes disapproving of pagan philosophy, kept copying Stoic texts because they found the ethics valuable. There was even a forged correspondence between Seneca and St. Paul that convinced Christians that Seneca was practically a proto-Christian. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations survived in just a handful of manuscripts. We came intensely close to losing one of the greatest books ever written. The Renaissance changed everything. When scholars rediscovered classical texts and the printing press made books accessible, Stoicism exploded back into European consciousness. Thinkers like Justus Lipsius adapted Stoic ideas for early modern Europe, showing that ancient wisdom could address contemporary problems. But the real revival happened in the 20th and 21st centuries. As psychology developed, researchers realized that Stoic techniques for managing emotions and building resilience were incredibly effective. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most successful forms of modern psychotherapy, is basically applied Stoicism. Today, millions of people practice Stoicism without even realizing it. Every time you focus on solutions instead of problems, every time you accept what you can't change while working on what you can, every time you choose your response to difficult situations, you're using 2,000-year-old Stoic wisdom. So what can we learn from this incredible journey from shipwreck to philosophy that rules the world? First, that the best ideas often come from the worst situation. Zeno's financial disaster became humanity's philosophical fortune. The challenges faced by Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius weren't obstacles to their wisdom. They were the source of it. Second, that accessibility matters. Stoicism survived because it was practical, not precious. It worked for emperors and slaves, merchants and soldiers, ancient Romans, and modern entrepreneurs. Third, that philosophy isn't just about thinking, it's about living. The Stoics didn't just develop theories about virtue and resilience. They practiced these principles under pressure, in real situations with real consequences. And finally, that some truths are timeless. The fundamental challenges of human existence, dealing with loss, managing emotions, finding meaning, treating others fairly, these haven't changed in 2,000 years. Neither have the solutions that work. When you wake up tomorrow and face whatever challenges await you, remember, you're not just dealing with modern problems. You're confronting the same essential human struggles that Zeno faced after his shipwreck, that Epictetus faced as a slave, that Marcus Aurelius faced as emperor. And you have access to the same tools they developed, tools tested by centuries of human experience, refined by some of history's greatest minds, and proven effective by millions of practitioners across cultures and centuries. The question isn't whether Stoicism works. The question is, are you ready to join this 2,000-year conversation about how to live well? That merchant who lost everything in a shipwreck, he found something far more valuable than gold. He found a way of living that has enriched human experience for over 2 millennia. Now, that wisdom is yours to claim. Remember to like this video if you learned something new about Stoicism's incredible origins. Subscribe for more deep dives into ancient wisdom. And let me know in the comments which part of this story you found most interesting. Have you yourself learned lots from Seneca, Epictetus, or Marcus Aurelius? I'd love to hear your thoughts.